Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
So, after I made my videos about cultural representation, periods, and LGBTQ+ representation, I got a ton of people asking if I was going to do a video on neurodivergent representation. And that was always my plan. But for a number of reasons, the video kept getting delayed. I was waiting for more of June and the Ghost of Molly McGee, and then shortly after The Grand Gesture came out, YouTube slapped me with demonetization again. And then of course, Molly McGee ended, and I not only made a video about that, but also started helping organize a whole charity stream in honor of the show. We raised $15,000 for Give Kids the World, and I'm working on finishing up school right now. I went to New Orleans and California, and there's also this project that I'm working on.
Speaking of authentic New Orleans cuisine, Ollie says to make them at Cafe Du Monde. Think you still have room for some beignets?
What do you think?
I actually learned about the concept of spoon theory from one of Illumination's videos, and it's super helpful. Even with my outgoing and extroverted nature, I still only have so many spoonfuls of energy, and I'm trying to do a lot of stuff without burning myself out. So, as always, I appreciate your kindness, support, and patience. And speaking of that Illumation video, this topic in particular is super important to me because I'm neurodivergent, and so are a lot of my family and friends. Go figure, we're all awkward dorks who love theme parks, cartoons, obscure media, and so on. And, especially with the internet, neurodivergent people with common interests tend to have a way of finding each other. It's like what they say about Mabels in Lost Legends. We end up coming together like potato chip crumbs in the bottom of the bag. I'd also compare it to M&M's in the bottom of a bag of sweet and salty Chex Mix. You know how they all kind of sink to the bottom? I was hungry when I wrote this script, wasn't I? ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was really little, but it wasn't until towards the end of high school that I was officially diagnosed with autism, and it was mainly so that I could get more time to do tests. In case you clicked on this video and are completely unfamiliar, or just need a refresher, here's a brief rundown of both of these disorders and what they mean. Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, or ADHD, is a mental condition beginning in childhood and often persisting into later life that is characterized by persistent difficulty in maintaining attention and concentration, and is frequently accompanied by hyperactive and impulsive behavior. And autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. People with ASD often have problems with social communication and interaction, and restricted or repetitive behaviors or interests. Technically, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, which was characterized by being on the more high-functioning end of the spectrum. But that was actually discontinued shortly after I was diagnosed, because not only is the idea of having this separate diagnosis kind of ableist in and of itself, but also the guy it was named after was, a Nazi. Also, it's worth noting that the terms high-functioning and low-functioning aren't helpful either. People on the autism spectrum will have varying challenges and may need varying levels of assistance with different things, and that can even vary day by day. What's important to remember is that autism is a spectrum, and it's not a sliding scale either. Everyone is different, and everyone has different experiences. And before we get to the topic at hand, I figured that I should share some of mine. Like many people who found out that they were autistic later in life, there's a lot of things from my childhood that I look back on and go, yeah, that explains so much. I went to Disneyland a lot growing up, so of course, theme parks have always been a lifelong special interest of mine. When talking to my mom about this video, she talked about how I would always collect theme park maps and hotel rat card brochures. One of my favorite videos to watch as a kid was literally an infomercial from the 90s for the world's greatest amusement park, Cedar Point.
Get to the point, get to the point.
I had said I wanted to be an Imagineer since I was 2. Like many other autistic kids, there was plenty of things I was sensitive to. Loud noises were always a big one. Fireworks, loud baby cries, sirens, fire alarms, the Firebird Suite in Fantasia 2000, you know, very typical autism sensory triggers. I definitely have to talk about balloons, because, like many other people on the spectrum who are sensitive to loud noises, I hated the sound of balloons popping. But in spite of that, I freaking loved balloons as a kid. I just hated it when they were popped. I was always anxious whenever other kids would have them, or especially when there was some kind of game being played where balloons being popped was a part of it. Because it was always a ticking time bomb. But when I was in control, I loved playing with them, and I always wanted to have one when we went out to a place that had them. If someone was giving out balloons, we couldn't leave until I had one. Did I drive my parents crazy with them? No! Definitely not.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I absolutely did. But in hindsight, I think doing things like blowing them up and deflating them constantly, batting them around, etc., that was all stimming. Oh, and stimming is the repetitive performance of certain physical movements or vocalizations as a form of behavior by persons with autism or other neurodevelopmental conditions, self-stimulation. This behavior is thought to serve a variety of functions, such as calming and expression of feelings. Looking at it objectively, it makes a lot of sense, because if you can get past the possibility of a loud noise, balloons are big, bright, and colorful, and they're soft, bouncy, and tactile in a really unique way. There's so much that can be appealing about them from a sensory perspective, and it's a hyperfixation that hasn't ever gone away. I had something of a similar, albeit not as strong, love-hate relationship with the Fireworks and Fantasmic. They were both so cool. Fantasmic especially is such an amazing show, but they were also kind of overwhelming, especially after the end of a long park day. I absolutely adore Happily Ever After and Fantasmic, but I still flinch a little at the loud noise from the fireworks and pyrotechnics, especially if I'm not staying on Main Street. Somehow it's actually louder just about everywhere else in the park. By the way, if you're sensitive to loud noise, don't ever get in line for the Haunted Mansion at Magic Kingdom right before Happily Ever After. That being said, if you can tolerate the noise, a fireworks ride on the Matterhorn, Astro Orbiter, or Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is still one of the coolest experiences you can have at the parks. Speaking of Big Thunder, I have to bring this up because it just happened as I'm writing this, but on my last day in California, we had come back over to Disneyland after spending the day in Burbank visiting Swampy and the Phineas and Ferb crew over at Disney TVA, and having lunch with Bill Motz and Bob Roth over at Bob's Big Boy. Everyone else in our group had left, and it was just myself, my mom, and Luke Ski. And we had decided that Big Thunder Mountain Railroad would be a good choice for our last ride of the night, and therefore the trip. Then we got grouped in front of a bunch of idiot teenagers who thought it would be fun to scream bloody murder the entire ride. Seriously, this wasn't normal, scared, fun roller coaster screaming. This was, I am being murdered with a hatchet screaming. And for comparison, I had literally just ridden X2, which is arguably the most scary and intense roller coaster on this hemisphere 2 days earlier, and nobody screamed out loudly on that. So please be considerate of others when you're out in public. You may think doing that is fun and silly, but you have no idea how much doing something like that could harm someone and potentially ruin their day. I don't get panic attacks or anything like that, but I was still seriously rattled getting off of that ride. It sucked. Anyways, in spite of obnoxious teenagers, I think that going to the park so often from an early age definitely helped prime me to not have problems dealing with large crowds. Oh, but by far, my weirdest autistic hangup comes from Eddie Burback's favorite restaurant, the Rainforest Cafe. Somehow that whole restaurant wasn't overstimulating for me. Actually, maybe it was, and I just had a hard time conveying that. No, my nemesis as a young autistic child was...
Hi, folks. My name is Tracy Tree. Wow, look at all those fish.
Ask about taking an educational tour of our rainforest so you can learn fun and interesting facts.
Yeah, no, my mom was telling me one time we were walking past the one at MGM Grand, and literally I just heard the chimes, and it was a meltdown. Like, I didn't even see her. I was also terrified of the classic Haunted Mansion as a kid, and only did Haunted Mansion Holiday until I was probably around 9 or 10 years old. I had absolutely no problem with the Tower of Terror, though, go figure. I loved thrill rides as a kid, and obviously still do. So, yeah, the roller coasters at Magic Mountain or Knott's Berry Farm? No problem. But if you tried to get me to see Honey, I Shrunk the Audience where it's tough to be a bug? Oh, hell no. Of course, I think there's also a tendency for stuff like that to come back around and become its own special interest later into your teenage years and adulthood. Case in point, the Haunted Mansion is now one of my favorite things ever, and extraterrestrial alien encounter is something I know I would have never been able to do as a kid, but if it was still around today, it would be one of my favorite attractions. There were also a lot of things regarding food when I was a kid. I wouldn't say that I was a picky eater, because I really wasn't. But there's some very specific textural things I didn't like as a kid. A lot of these I've actually come around to. For example, as a kid, I thought that I didn't like PB&J. Then as an adult, I came to realize that I actually really love PB&J. I just hate soggy PB&J. I also only ever wanted scrambled eggs and omelets when having eggs. No fried or over easy or anything. That's another thing I've grown to actually like. Kid Chandler would think I've gone completely insane upon seeing me eating a bagel with cream cheese and a runny egg for breakfast. I still can't do fried eggs by themselves though. I need something to mop up the yolk with. Although, for real, why are you ordering or making fried eggs if you don't have toast or a bagel or something? That's the best part! Oh, and forget about deviled eggs, hard-boiled eggs, and egg salad. Nope, not for me. Not ever. And I didn't like most candy with nuts. That started to change when Take 5 came on the scene, and nowadays I love almost any kind of chocolate bar you can throw at me. But I actually still don't really like peanut M&Ms. I can tolerate them, but I would never go out of my way to get them. Especially when you can literally just get peanut butter M&Ms for the same price. That's gotta be a texture thing too. Because of all the sensory stuff and the hyperfixations and special interests, my parents definitely knew I was more than just ADHD the whole time. But I didn't know. And there's a part of me that wishes that I had known. Because I always felt different from other kids. And I didn't know why. And it's not that my parents didn't tell me that I was autistic because they didn't want me to use it like a crutch. My mom said they just didn't feel like it was super necessary for me to know. They did everything they could to set me up for success and foster my interests, but like a lot of kids on the spectrum, it was still often hard to make friends. Which is why they sent me to charter schools. Speed run of my education history, the first 3 years of that were pretty great, but then they opened a second campus where the idea was that it was going to provide a Montessori school type of curriculum. Think like the school you see in Bluey. For the younger kids, it's more of a guided play type of thing, and as you get older, it becomes a self-guided learning curriculum. But the key word there is curriculum. There's still a curriculum. The teachers here had absolutely no clue what they were doing, and the result was a school that functioned more like a daycare. Literally in 4th grade, they let us just do whatever we wanted. They had different rooms with different things that were vaguely educational, and you could just have at it. Was it fun? Hell yeah! Did I learn anything that year? Oh, you better believe I didn't. So with that, I was pulled out of that school and did homeschool to catch up. Unfortunately, I missed out on the social aspect of being in a regular school for a whole year, and as I mentioned previously, ended up being severely bullied back in 6th grade. 7th grade, I finally ended up going back to public school, and I was actually really able to thrive and make friends there. But then we suddenly moved to Florida in 2010, and I had to start all over at a new school. And, of course, in high school, I got to take video production, where I was really able to foster my creativity. I did dual enrollment for the last 2 years of high school, and I'm just now finishing up college. I never really had the traditional college experience for a variety of reasons, but, of course, I've been working since 2014, and I also made friends with a lot of other people with like interests through social media. I don't like what Twitter has become, but I can't deny that it did change my life, and I am forever grateful for it. And after about 11 minutes of talking about my experience, I think it's about time we get to the subject at hand. But when talking about neurodivergent representation in media, it can get tricky because until very recently, there wasn't a whole lot you could point to that was actually canon representation. And I think the other things to keep in mind with animation are that quite a few of the extremely creative mad geniuses who make these shows possible are neurodivergent. And a lot of animation is about exaggeration. A character may fidget or stim in an exaggerated way, but that doesn't automatically make them autistic. So this video might be a little messy, and I might not talk about your favorite character, or you may disagree with my assessment, and that's totally okay. I'd love to talk all about this in the comments below. Share your stories, your headcanons, whatever. I'm also going to be focusing mostly on ADHD and autism here, since that's what I have the most experience with. Mental health topics like anxiety and PTSD are definitely subjects for another day, but for now, let's stick with ADHD and autism. I think the best place to start is with a canon example of autism that would likely be most kids' first exposure to a discussion of what autism is. That being Julia from Sesame Street. As I've discussed before, Sesame Street is no stranger to topics like this. Julia is autistic and has a lot of the classic symptoms of being autistic. She engages with the world and other people in a different way. For example, when we first meet her, Elmo and Abby are finger painting while Julia is using a brush because she doesn't like the way the paint feels. I think the way they did her introduction with Big Bird was perfect because Big Bird is very childlike and often stands in for the kids who are watching. He worries that Julia doesn't want to be friends with him. Alan, I don't think Julia likes me very much. Oh no, you two are just meeting for the first time. Oh, so she's shy. Oh, I get that. I can be shy sometimes too. Well, with Julia, it's not just that. She has autism. She likes it when people know that. Autism? What's autism? Well, for Julia, it means she might not answer you right away. Yeah, Julia doesn't say a whole lot. That's right. And she may not do what you expect, like give you a high five. Yeah, she does things just a little differently, in that, Julia sort of way. And he has to learn to be patient with her. Julia was developed in partnership with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and writers on the show who had autistic children that wanted to see autism represented. There was debate amongst the staff on what sort of characteristics to portray, since autism is a spectrum and everyone is different. But overall, when Julia first debuted, the reception was extremely positive. I haven't watched a ton of Sesame Street stuff with her in it, but based on what I've seen, I would say that Julia doesn't really get to be much of a character outside of just being autistic, but she's just a kid, and the goal is to keep things pretty generic so that autistic kids are able to identify with her, and so that neurotypical kids can learn to be patient and empathetic towards other kids who have a different way of interacting with the world. Julia didn't like the siren. The siren? It wasn't that loud. Oh well, it was to Julia. Yeah, her ears are really sensitive, so some sounds are just too much for her. Gee, I hope she's gonna be okay. Oh, she will. Yeah, Julia just needs a break sometimes. And then Sesame Workshop messed up. They made the absolutely baffling decision to partner with Autism Speaks, which prompted the Autism Self-Advocacy Network to cut ties with them. For several years, ASAN consulted with Sesame Street on their See Amazing project and the development of their autistic character, Julia. Until this summer, the content Sesame Street produced showed parents that their autistic children could live great lives, and taught autistic and neurotypical children ways to become friends. Through this approach, See Amazing successfully encouraged the inclusion of autistic children in their communities, and had a widespread positive impact. Sesame Street has now decided to undo that progress. Its latest PSAs featuring Julia promote Autism Speaks' Screen for Autism initiative, and their resource for parents of newly diagnosed autistic children, the 100-Day Kid. Like much of Autism Speaks' recent advertising, these PSAs use the language of acceptance and understanding to push resources that further stigma and treat autistic people as burdens on their families. The 100-Day Kid encourages parents to blame family difficulties on their autistic child. When you find yourself arguing with your spouse, be careful not to get mad at each other, when it is really the autism that has you so upset and angry. And to view autism as a terrible disease from which their child can get better. It recommends compliance-based quote-unquote therapies and pseudoscientific quote-unquote autism diets, but fails to educate families about communication supports. It even instructs parents to go through the 5 stages of grief after learning that their child is autistic, as if they would if the child had died. This is so unbelievably frustrating because Sesame Street has always been such a strong force for kindness and empathy in the world, and it sucks to see them screw up this badly. You know what? Hold on. There's someone I gotta call.
Hello, how did you get this number?
Agatha, it's Chandler. I had you read that comment about turning red in the menstruation video.
As millions keep on stating, Disney, leave our children alone!
Listen, I need you to kind of help me articulate the feelings I'm feeling with Sesame Street partnering with Autism Speaks for PSAs.
Oh! You mean the group that gives you on their website the 5 stages of grief? Let me read this to you, Chandler. Don't ask why I have the website on hand. Sometimes I need to get angry. Grief does not progress in an orderly way that follows a predictable path. It is normal to move forwards and backwards among the 5 stages, skip a stage, or be stuck in one. Okay. This is what angers me. Yes, there are people who have severe cases that require proper professional help. Autism Speaks thinks everyone who has autism is like that. Which is just... do we have to bring up the video of the mother who was like, oh, I wanted to drive off the cliff with my daughter inside, but I wanted to live for my other children. Let me explain something about Autism Speaks and this whole stages of grief thing going on. Your child is not dead. This is something you have to adapt to. You have to be a parent. Get off your sorry asses. Your child isn't dead. Your child is alive and they need their parents. They need you. You cannot be going through grief if the thing you are grieving is still there, is still alive. They're just different. And that's okay. That's a normal thing. Look at me. I have a hyperfixation on crab experiments. So what? There's people out there who can help you. There's support groups. There's resources. There's professionals. There's therapists. There's coping mechanisms. Have you ever heard of a weighted blanket? That's the greatest shit that's ever been invented. It just angers me so much that you would label autism on the same stage as death. My first words as a baby, this is true, was Big Bird. And to find out, Sesame Street is partnering with people who think these things and want to make a cure. When I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I found out there wasn't a cure, I had to adapt. You just have to adapt. You're a human. We've evolved to learn how to adapt. And it's going to be hard. Of course it is. Life's hard. And your child needs you. Having my autism diagnosed was the biggest breath of relief I've ever felt. I could talk to my parents and be like, hey, my brain cannot function very well today. Is that okay? We talked about a spoon method, like how many spoons you have throughout the day. And they could relate. And talking to my parents was easier. Have you tried talking? Communicating? Sesame Street. You guys are absolutely hilarious. Love you guys. You are literally part of my life because of the first words I spoke. And it saddens me to see you partner with Autism Speaks. And I know you've created a Muppet that is on the spectrum, but it's not enough. I'm sorry. I love you guys. But this hurts us. And it's going to hurt more people. Imagine having your loved ones treat you like you are at a funeral and you are in the casket. And no matter how much you scream, how much you wave your arms, they are grieving. That's not right. Look, you guys have done so much. But I think it's time to silence Autism Speaks. So their words don't hurt anymore.
I mean, remember when Elmo asked how everyone was doing and everyone poured their hearts out to him? That's the kind of impact Sesame Street has.
Oh my gosh, you love Elmo, don't you? Mr. Laurie, Elmo knocked you before.
Ask permission before you touch people, Larry.
Let's get back on the couch and let's talk about how you feel.
Thankfully, they seem to have at least distanced themselves from Autism Speaks, but they haven't publicly denounced them yet either, which is a real shame. I also think it's worth noting that SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, which owns Sesame Place and Busch Gardens, has made a point of getting all of their parks to be certified autism centers. They have quiet rooms at their parks and a bunch of resources available online, which is awesome. My only problem is that they use the puzzle piece imagery, which is honestly pretty ableist. I actually went to Six Flags Magic Mountain last month, and I was surprised and delighted to find out that they also became a certified autism center, and they have the same kind of warnings, but they use the rainbow infinity symbol. That's awesome! Great job, Six Flags, seriously. And hopefully, with the massive merger that just happened between Cedar Fair and Six Flags, all of the parks under that umbrella will get the same certification. Disney should do this too. Disney does a lot to be accommodating with their disability access service, and they sell sensory headphones at Baby Care, but adding the sensory information and having quiet rooms would rock. But speaking of shows that are going to be huge in shaping upcoming generations, let's talk about Bluey. Jack Russell Terriers are known for being very hyperactive, so it was only natural that Bluey would feature a Jack Russell Terrier with ADHD. Jack has a hard time sitting still, a hard time remembering things, and a hard time doing what he's told.
Why can't you do what you're told? I don't know.
And as you would imagine, his attention span is very limited. In the episode Army, Jack makes a new friend named Rusty. His dad is in the army, and the two of them play army.
Can I be in the army?
Well, maybe. Can you do as you're told?
No, I'm not good at doing what...
Attention! On the left, quick, march! Hop, 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 hold! On the right, march! Hop, 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 hold! Salute! Yeah, you can play.
By the way, definitely don't think too hard about there being an army in the world of Bluey. It's like thinking about how Chili works in airport security, which leads me to believe that there was probably a terrorist. What's really great about Bluey, and about this episode in particular, is that it's not preachy. It just shows Jack living his life. He forgets his hat. He has a hard time sitting still and focusing. But he's still a good kid, and he's determined to get things right in playing this detailed game of pretend with his classmate.
The group Russian, what's our location?
It was all down to me. I had to remember what that tree was called. Tango 5, no, Tango 6. Tango 7!
We're next to Tango 7, over?
I also had a thought when I was editing this about Mum School, in which Bluey is pretending to be a mother to a bunch of kids, who are balloons. Trying to think of a joke about this, but I just can't come up with an angle.
They're my children. I gave birth to them all.
Oh my goodness.
But one of them doesn't behave like the others because it's filled with helium, and Bluey has to be a little bit more gentle and patient with it.
Hi, sweetheart. I think there's a reason you keep floating off, isn't there? What could it be? Maybe you just like exploring. Aw, that's nice, Creamy. Well, you're not old enough to go exploring too far yet. So, this is a special present for you, because I love you so much. One day you can float up as high as you want, but for now, this will help you stay down here with us.
Maybe not intended, but I think it can be looked at as a bit of a metaphor. Moving on, let's talk about Phineas and Ferb, and its related shows.
Hamster, 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 and Fred's also Kevin in the minivan.
Someone recently did a Q&A with Dan and Swampy where they said,
realized that it has, but that wasn't like a plan for us. And some of it may be that Ferb's
everybody thinks Ferb's autistic. All
probably
autistic people are
on the
convinced
spectrum.
Ferb is
Yeah,
autistic.
because just
well, I'm autistic, and I actually don't think that Ferb is autistic. It seems that the only trait people ever point to for Ferb being autistic is the fact that he's mostly quiet. Someone being more quiet and subdued doesn't automatically mean that they're on the autism spectrum. Now, missing obvious social cues, on the other hand, I think that's actually stronger evidence that Phineas could be on the spectrum. There's obviously his obliviousness towards Candace usually trying to get them in trouble, and of course, Isabella's giant crush on him.
And of course, there's the other tradition of kissing someone special at midnight.
Well, then I know what we're gonna do tonight.
Really?
Yeah, we're gonna make our own New Year's ball and drop it from outer space.
Your mother is right, Phineas. You have such an active imagination.
Not active enough.
But there's also a strong special interest in STEM, info dumping, and a stronger version of conflict. He's very passionate and goes over the top for everything. He's also hyper empathetic. He can't stand to see anyone being upset, so long as he actually recognizes that they're upset, of course.
Well, I saw him. I just didn't talk to him.
Oh, that's too bad. I thought, you know, the two of you, a boy, a girl, alone in the city of love. Isabella, are you okay?
Peachy.
And to that point, a lot of Phineas and Ferb's big ideas are centered around helping their friends. As for Doofenshmirtz, ADHD. All the way. I mean, they basically made it canon with this line.
Well, I wouldn't give for that kind of single-minded focus. Hey, what's that over there?
And go figure, Doof is essentially a fleshed out version of the kind of character Dan Povenmire would play as a kid. Dan's daughters, Melly and Alex, were both diagnosed with ADHD, and that was when Dan realized that he also has ADHD. And if you've watched pretty much any episode of Phineas and Ferb, looking at Doof as having ADHD just makes so much sense. Dan's daughter Melly plays Gretel in Hamster and Gretel, which automatically makes Gretel a really authentic representation of a kid with ADHD. Gretel has a really short attention span, and her older brother Kevin does everything he can to try to keep her on track. She frequently doesn't listen, though.
So what are we doing with this?
We're gonna use this to change the direction of the meteor and send it back into space. Fred is doing the math right now.
You're gonna want to hold it at about 47-degree tilt, about 20 feet above the building and 45 feet to the
Okay, Gretel, did you get that?
That's way too complicated. I say we just punch it.
Wait, Gretel, we don't know the composition or the mass of the meteor.
We've got this.
It's probably gonna be on fire.
Relax, Kevin.
Gretel, we don't know what will happen if you just punch it.
He's a great big brother who's always there to support her, and it's wonderful. Okay, so, I took some heat on Twitter the last time I criticized the Proud Family, and I'm gonna be fully honest, I don't like this show very much. Even putting aside the child endangerment episode temporarily, which I don't think you should actually do because that's really bad.
Guys! This isn't funny! Mama! Daddy! Baby? Cece? Bye! Somebody! Man, this is messed up.
You're damn right it's messed up. Penny's core friend group, specifically La Cienega and Dijonay, are horrible friends. Her family frequently doesn't treat her with anything resembling respect, and overall, Penny just deserves so much better. When bringing the show back for a reboot, it feels like they wanted to update everything they could reasonably change, but were staunchly against updating the core character dynamics. Which is a problem when a lot of these dynamics are kinda toxic. Case in point, the reboot episode, BB. I opened up a channel in my Discord server to discuss this video as I was making it, and literally the first thing I said was, I hate Oscar Proud.
I know you don't understand, Penny, but one day you will when you have your own children. And yes, I know that day will come. And it's my job as your father to do everything in my power to prevent it. And you got a choice. You can either buy some clothes from the Army Navy store, or you can join the Army Navy.
You get it? It's funny because Oscar is a horrible father who is totally obnoxious, overbearing, and refuses to accept that his daughter's growing up. The Proud Family is a show that's forever at odds with itself. The idea of a parent struggling to accept the possibility that their kid could be autistic is a very real one that's absolutely worth showcasing in a show like this. But Oscar is such an obnoxious and unlikable, for lack of a better term, cartoon character. The episode literally opens with every animal at the city's zoo protesting his horrible snacks.
This is Vanessa Vu, live from the scene at the Smithville Zoo, where the resident animals have risen up, herbivore and carnivore alike, in a truly stunning display of food chain unity, claiming cruel and unusual punishment caused by the use of the universally reviled Proud snacks.
You get it? It's funny because Oscar abuses zoo animals by testing out his awful snack foods that humans don't even eat on them.
You don't pay us, Mr. Proud. You just give us 2 bags of Proud snacks and a hearty handshake at the end of the day.
Get it? It's funny because Oscar treats his employees like garbage and doesn't actually pay them anything, and is possibly also violating child labor laws.
Well, I can't afford that either. Can't you hear me? I'm ruined. Now beat it. I can't believe this. Why have you forsaken me? Peebo, Mr. Chips, what are you doing here? I fired you.
And I hired them, Oscar.
What? You can't work for me, but you can work for my wife? This is treason.
Mr. Proud, you just said we were fired.
That was a figure of speech, Peebo.
So is a living wage, which, by the way, Dr. Parker is paying us.
Oscar has to go to a deposition for his crimes, and Trudy has to work at her actual real job. So Penny is forced to watch BB and Cece.
Me and my friends are going to the museum.
Good. You can take BB and Cece with you because you got to take them to school and pick them up.
Mama!
Come on, Penny. We don't ask you to do much around here as it is. This is the least you can do.
You literally asked me to do everything around here.
What was that?
Nothing. Your wish is my command. Come on, y'all.
Now, look, I understand asking your older kids to watch their younger siblings from time to time, but having them do that constantly and going as far as to say that this is her responsibility? No, the fuck it isn't. And the show acknowledges this.
Look, I got bad news. I can't go to the museum.
Why?
I have to watch BB and Cece. Zang! Again?
What's up with that? They're not your kids.
You know you have rights as a teen. You need to stand up for yourself, Penny.
Maya, I've got 2 black parents. I don't have any rights.
Nope, not opening that can of worms. This video is about autism, so let's focus on that. She takes them to the museum. Oh, did I say museum? I meant insane indoor theme park built by Phineas and Ferb, apparently. And BB escapes and almost gets himself killed. Like Julia, we don't really get a ton of characterization from BB beyond being a baby who's possibly on the autism spectrum. But this episode is mostly about how the family deals with that kind of diagnosis. BB needs more specialized supervision and care. Penny's just a kid herself, and she's not a childcare professional. Thankfully, she's actually able to open up about her concerns to Dr. Lord.
Instead of my dad sending him to your school, they're gonna turn around and put BB on me. I just know it.
And you resent that. I know I would.
Yeah, but I know I shouldn't. You must think I'm terrible.
Oh, no, Penny. I think you're in a tough situation. And the first step in not feeling bad is acknowledging it.
After seeing Dr. Lord, Oscar spends most of the episode in denial about BB being autistic.
My son is not on a spectrum, or whatever that is. He's just a little rambunctious like his old man. See? Just like me. There's nothing wrong with that. Ow!
Trudy, thank God, actually stands up for Penny and says that it's not fair for her to have to watch her siblings constantly. But I'd like to point out that this is literally only because BB is autistic, and without that, Trudy and Oscar would have continued to use Penny as their free babysitter forever. And it's not like Trudy's hurting for money if she's able to hire 2 new employees to work for her.
So is a living wage, which, by the way, Dr. Parker is paying us.
The biggest problem with this episode is that when you open up your episode reminding the audience that Oscar Proud is a really bad person who should probably be in jail for his crimes, and then spend the whole episode having him completely dismiss the concerns of his daughter and his wife, the emotional conclusion where Oscar comes to accept BB for who he is, it just falls completely flat. I'm not saying that he has to be a bandit-level perfect parent, but Oscar Proud is a terrible businessman, a deadbeat of a husband, and a terrible father. I'm literally only rooting for him to come around on BB being autistic for BB's sake. Oh, and apparently, the not-so-subtle Marvel cross-promotion was a hint that BB is actually a superhero. Which feels like a cop-out so that the show never has to address this again. And I'm actually grateful for that, because I'm never gonna watch this show again. There's good things in it, but it somehow always circles around to leave a bad taste in my mouth. I guess it's just too mean-spirited for me, I don't know. The best part of this entire episode is Dr. Lord. Unlike the other caricatures in this show, like Dr. Payne and Oscar Proud, Dr. Lord is exactly the kind of deeply empathetic professional who's passionate about working with these kids and helping them. I was talking with Molly McGee co-creator Bill Motz about this video, and he got me in touch with Jim Peterson, an autism self-advocate who's been studying infant and early childhood mental health and is a director of Rockford Day Nursery Early Learning Center in Illinois. What kind of things would you say are important to consider when writing an autistic or otherwise neurodivergent character?
Okay, so this is where it was like, so way back on Darkwing, on our second episode, I mean, I wouldn't put him as classically autistic, but he definitely had some autistic traits. And I'm wearing his shirt with him on it. This is Dr. Reginald Bushroot. He's one of the main villains in Darkwing. But what I was able to do with him, because we invented the character, actually, he came to me while walking to the grocery store from our apartment, but we're back in 1990. But he went from being like a nerdy scientist with a crush on a coworker, but he could never express himself, and then he got superpowers by changing himself into a half duck, half plant thing. But
as you do,
really, and then he goes and he kills his two nemesis, the scientists who work in the lab with him, and I wanted that transformation to work, and I wrote like this huge, long mental process for him that a lot of it ended up getting cut, but in my mind, it made perfect sense to him in a, kind of removing, that these people were not only his tormentors, but also they were, impeding science and the course of everything pro-social that he was going to do. But and then those got that used as, that dialogue section got used to cast the character. So it really felt great that I was able to, and I didn't even know at the time, we had no idea even what autism was, because even like Rain Man hadn't even come out then, and that's like an extreme example that's kind of misrepresents most autistic people anyway. But it wasn't until like a year or so later that I knew officially that one of the writers on Bonkers, his daughter, young daughter, was diagnosed, and there was no understanding of it back then. So I was just taking traits out of myself and trying to put them in this character, even though he was a villain. He's just, and that today, if you read anybody's, like, he's not really a villain, he's just misunderstood, and and given enormous powers that he can control plants, like and communicate to plants and feel their feelings and everything. So but I think, but you're right on the analysis of the other characters. You just don't want to stick to like the stereotypes, because there are, it is a spectrum, and for you it's autism plus ADHD. For me, it's more anxiety and autism, like my son. So he's like anxiety and OCD and autism. So there's a lot of different components that can go into any one character. So you want to make it feel, and there are endless topics to be obsessed with. So it doesn't have to be the standard ones of
course. And it's like, it's not just one thing. It's not just one thing for me. There's several things, and it it goes, it changes, some one month I'll be hyperfixated on one show, the next it's another. But then there's some others that just are like always there in the background, that
sure, or they'll come back away. Right, it'll be like
or come back.
musical groups.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
like musical groups for me, like I'll forget about somebody for a long time and then like I'll suddenly start listening to their music again.
Yeah, Jim and I ended up talking for about a half an hour about all of this, so for the sake of time for the video, I'm going to make the whole interview with him a separate video, and that will be available in the description below. Let's go through some more headcanons, starting with the Pines family from Gravity Falls. There's absolutely a very strong argument to be made for Dipper and Ford. Dipper has a strong interest in the paranormal. He'll info dump whenever he gets the chance, and he tends to have a lot of trouble in social situations. He also has problems with doing laundry.
At least I wash my clothes once in a while.
Washing clothes is a waste of time. I'm a busy guy.
Meow, 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 meow.
All right, if you meow one more time.
Meow, meow, meow.
See, my problem isn't the act of washing them, it's having to put them away that I totally hate. Remember when I was talking about spoon theory? I literally have to build myself up to fold laundry, not even kidding. He also stims by playing with his pen while reading and chewing on his shirt, which is another thing I definitely did as a kid. Anyways, most things you can say about Dipper can also apply to Ford, since they have so much in common. But what about Mabel? Yes, I do believe that Mabel is also autistic. She's very outgoing and friendly, which is a lot like how I was when I was a kid, and she's also fairly naive. She's endlessly creative and very passionate about, well, pretty much anything she's interested in. The comfy sweaters she always wears, even during the hot Oregon summer, seem like they could be a sensory thing, as well as possibly a special interest of their own, and or a routine thing. We also see what happens whenever she gets overwhelmed and shuts down.
Mabel,
Mabel's not here. She's in Sweater Town.
are you gonna come out of Sweater Town?
Webby from DuckTales has a lot in common with Mabel in terms of her incredibly friendly and outgoing nature, although she's also very socially awkward. This doesn't automatically mean that she's autistic though, especially when you remember the context that she spent most of her life in McDuck Manor and didn't really have any friends before the triplets arrived. Still, it's easy to see her strong interest in studying the McDuck family's history as a very strong special interest.
Huey, Dewey, and Louie Duck. Scrooge McDuck's great-nephews on his sister Hortense's side with Quackmore Duck twice removed.
Tilly from Big City Greens is another character that I could potentially see being autistic, but sort of like with Fur being quiet, Tilly being eccentric doesn't necessarily mean she's on the spectrum. Cricket might also be on the spectrum. The shoes thing and needing a jar of dirt from the country feel like they could be autism things, but he definitely has ADHD.
Hold up, what's this?
Oh, that's just to hold all the books I'm gonna acquire.
This is full of toys. Bouncy balls, board games, Lego blocks.
I'm weak. I want to find a book, but I know my brain. If it's not constantly stimulated, I will lose it.
I actually want to take a quick detour away from Disney Channel shows and talk about a show I love that I haven't ever really talked about on my channel yet. Bob's Burgers. There's not a neurotypical explanation for any of the Belchers. Actually, there's not a neurotypical explanation for most of the cast of Bob's Burgers. The possibility of the eldest Belcher sibling, Tina, being autistic is actually brought up by the youngest, Louise, in the first episode.
Yeah, but Tina's not good with the customers.
Bob, I'm good with the customers.
Not really.
I'm great with the customers.
She's autistic. She can't help it.
Yeah, I'm autistic.
Bob, just a sec. No, you're not autistic, Tina.
But like, yes, Tina is absolutely autistic. She often says whatever she's thinking without much of a filter.
That's actually good, Tammy. Zeke's really gross.
I don't feel that way!
She has trouble picking up on social cues, and she has very strong special interests in hyperfixations. Some of which cross over into her budding sexuality, as seen in her erotic friend fiction. Jean is loud and sassy.
She's pretty big. It'd be easier to put the phone on Tina.
Jane.
You saved us, Gene. I owe you my life.
No thanks. I've seen it and I'm not impressed.
Again, doesn't have much of a filter.
Oh, I see. So you want to spend an hour with them now so you don't have to go to Florida.
Kind of like you're checking a box.
Grandma's box?
Jane, don't say that.
Say what? Grandma's box? Our couple is also what we call Dad's boobs.
Jane.
Or we could, I don't know, maybe go by, who has the biggest ding-dong?
Jane.
Like Tina, he can also have a hard time with social cues. And he loves music. Gene tends to stim through repetition of sounds, be it through an instrument like his keyboard or just verbally.
Burgers and fries! Burgers and fries! Alright, so we got that song.
Is it really a song, though, if you just say words over and over?
Good point. I guess most songs are sung.
And he can find music in everything, including ordinary objects such as a spoon, napkin holder, and a rubber band. And there was a whole episode where he and his dad bond over wanting to go see a laser light show rock opera. It seems like exactly the kind of thing Gene would love, but then he gets overstimulated and has a meltdown.
Here it comes, man. Here it comes.
Here one comes, lollipop hippie!
Gene, are you okay?
I wanna go right now!
Are you sure? Because this... Oh, you seem sure.
Don't make me go back in there!
Gene, it's okay. It's okay. Take a breath. Not that fast. Look. Gene, do you want to go back in or do you want to go home?
Home! I mean, maybe. It's your birthday, so...
Don't worry about that. I won't enjoy the show if you're not enjoying it.
Okay, let's go home.
Or we could go back in and I could help you get through it because it's just the beginning. All right. We'll go home.
Good plan.
And Bob does a really great job comforting him, and they're ultimately able to find a solution that allows them to go back inside.
I can make you earplugs with this.
Gross, and thank you.
Speaking of Bob also displays autistic tendencies. I mean, look no further than the baby you can chive my car burger.
Henry, I present to you, baby, you can chive my car burger. Sour cream, chives, and little fried pickle wheels on the sides that make it look like a car. Vroom, vroom.
You know he's a grown man, right?
Someone's having fun at work today.
Yeah, a lot.
He has a very strong love of food, which I also strongly relate to. And the whole point of opening Bob's Burgers was so that it could be this wonderful creative outlet for him and his Food Rocks level food puns.
I came up with a bunch of ideas for specials. The Crispy Brinkley Burger, the Richard Persimmons Burger, the Greeda's Gouda Burger.
Okay.
We see some other examples of him hyperfixating throughout the show. Like when he springs for a new high-quality chef's knife and won't stop talking about it, to the point where he and Teddy get into an argument. And when he becomes obsessed with patty cake. Yeah, it's like the show Stomp, but literally with patty cake.
Experience patty cake like never before. Cake. The New York Times says cake makes everything we've been doing with our hands obsolete. This week at the Wharf Arts Center.
We're not skipping cake.
Okay, fine. But I'm gonna complain the whole time.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. How's cake?
Loved it!
Maybe so hungry. Now I'm craving cake.
Who wants to cake with me?
And Teddy actually gets overwhelmed and shuts down over the physical touch.
I don't like it. Stop.
Keep your hands up.
I don't like it. I don't like this.
Keep them up.
Just stop, Bob. I don't like it.
Don't lower your hands. Teddy.
You're scaring him. He's crying.
It's not fun for everyone, Bob.
Yes, Bob's best customer and de facto best friend Teddy can also be read as being autistic.
Teddy's not my best friend.
Teddy thinks you're best friends.
He does?
Sure.
Yep.
Wait, who's your best friend then?
Probably Walter Russo.
Walter Russo? When was the last time he talked to Walter Russo?
And likely also ADHD. He tends to have similar trouble with social cues as Tina and Gene. He tends to obsess over things a lot. I can actually see a fair amount of myself in Teddy. He can go off on seemingly random tangents, but he's also incredibly friendly. The episode Driving Big Dummy has Teddy driving Bob to pick up a new sink. Teddy's super prone to distraction and has to chat up everyone, which is something I do a lot.
I guess maybe I thought you were lonely, but you're really not at all. You make friends wherever you go, and you're so interested in people all the time. I'm never interested in people. I don't like people that much. Not you guys, though. You seem great, but I don't really like that about myself, and I guess I really admire that about you.
Oh, thanks. And hey, don't beat yourself up, Bob. You are like that, kind of, with the 6 people you already know. But yeah, maybe you could branch out a bit.
He's also been shown to be a hoarder, which, okay, I'm not nearly as bad as that, but I still tend to hang on to a lot of junk I don't need. And with characters like this in a show ostensibly made for adults, it would be so easy for the show to be mean-spirited and treat them like the butt of the joke. But while there is plenty of comedy to be had from how awkward the characters in Bob's Burgers are, there's also so much love and empathy there. The Belchers may rib each other every now and then, but they still genuinely care for each other.
Unless you lived inside of Mom, you can't mess with Tina. We're Belchers, from the womb to the tomb.
And apart from some very real moments of self-doubt, they are entirely unapologetic about being their weird, wonderful selves. It's great. And speaking of characters who are unapologetic about being themselves, let's talk about the Owl House. The Owl House was obviously groundbreaking for its LGBTQ+ representation, but it's also always been a show about people who don't fit into the norms of society. The series opens on Luz getting in trouble at school for her very creative but very over-the-top book report. The latest of many incidents like this.
I like editing anime clips to music and reading fantasy books with convoluted backstories.
Dana Terrace confirmed that Luz does have ADHD, but you can definitely see some autistic tendencies there as well. Most notably, her strong special interest in fantasy. In Thanks to Them, we see that Luz has always been this endlessly creative kid, and that's no surprise given that her parents were both massive nerds who met thanks to the in-universe sci-fi franchise Cosmic Frontier. Her father left the first Good Witch of Zora book when he passed away, which leads me to believe that Luz was already huge into fantasy, and he got her that book knowing that she'd absolutely love it. Luz finds herself in the Boiling Isles, a fantasy world that seems like something beyond her wildest dreams. But the Boiling Isles also has very strict expectations and norms for witches, which is what led Ida the Owl Lady to be an outlaw.
Wow! Acceptance? Camaraderie? A sense of belonging? Covens sound incredible! Ida, why haven't you ever joined one?
Watch closely, Luz. When you join a coven, all your other magic is sealed away. From now on, that kid will only be able to make illusions. Since I never joined a coven, I can do every kind of magic. That's why I'm the most powerful witch on the Boiling Isles.
And I think the thesis of this whole show is summed up by this one line from the pilot.
I don't fit in at home. You don't fit in here. If I stay, we could not fit in together.
Luz is still an outcast in the Boiling Isles by virtue of being a human and not being able to do magic the way everyone else can. But she finds her own unique ways around that with the glyphs. And she's able to find people who love and accept her for who she is. Moon Girl! Oh my gosh, please go watch Moon Girl. I don't want to jump straight to the conclusion that Lunella is autistic, but there's definitely some autistic traits you can see there, and you don't have to look very hard. She's really friendly, outgoing, and confident, but she has a hard time actually making friends and relating to anyone else at school until she meets Casey. When she does get to go to that sleepover with the girls from the volleyball team, she's incredibly anxious about fitting in. We also see her deal with PTSD in Season 2, but that's something I'll revisit down the road. For autistic tendencies, there's definitely info dumping.
And what I'm saying is, New York bagels are objectively superior because our tap water has a low concentration of calcium and magnesium, so the gluten in the dough is... I'm doing it again, aren't I?
Yeah, Lunella's absolutely right. It's all in the water. It really is. And when Casey redesigns her lab and moves everything, adding a new color-coded system that she's not used to,
It's my new color-coding system designed to maximize efficiency.
We could go back to my old system.
Yeah, a pile is not a system.
it's a change that she absolutely hates.
The hyper-pliers, as it says in the reference card I made. Oh, that's right. You gooed it.
No, you gooed everything.
What was that?
It's just... I asked you to help clean a little, not change my whole sanctum sanctorum.
Perdón?
You come in here with your posters and your music and your delicious yet nutritionally balanced smoothies and you think it's okay to move my stuff around. Well, nuh-uh.
And the rest of the annoyances Casey brings about in that episode could also be viewed from the lens of Lunella being autistic. Now, I'd love to talk about Norma from Dead End Paranormal Park, but A, the last time I used anything longer than the shortest of short clips from that show, the video got blocked for copyright, and B, I haven't finished watching that show yet. So let's move on to Amphibia. Marcy wasn't initially written with her being autistic in mind, but upon having a group of psychologists analyze her character, Matt Burley basically said, "I defer to your expertise." Marcy goes through the absolute ringer over the course of Amphibia's run, and of course, we get pieces of backstory filled in a bit of a non-linear fashion. We know that Anne and Marcy were besties before they met Sasha.
Look, Marmar, I'm an eagle! Cool! Well, I'm a twin-engine C-Max amphibious aircraft!
For real though, if that line didn't tell you everything you needed to know. A good amount of the story of Amphibia is undoing the damage Sasha did, and there's probably also a whole video there.
I thought you were trying to be my friend.
I am!
Well, this is what friends do, remember? They help each other get the things they want.
Huh?
Look, if a friend likes a pencil case, you get it for them. If your friend likes your new shoes, you give them to her. And if a friend wants you to steal a crazy music box from a thrift store, even if you really don't want to, you do it, okay?
But for the purposes of this video, let's just focus on Marcy. She's a great student, she loves video games, and all kinds of other nerdy stuff.
The greatest JRPG of all time. Have you played it? Do you want to play it? Do you want to borrow it? Just say the word and I'll lend you my copy. Man, it'll change your lives!
All the usual types of special interests and hyperfixations. And while Sasha never outright bullies her for this, she doesn't ever really take her interests seriously either. And because of Sasha's effect on Anne doesn't really take her interests seriously.
I know what you're thinking. The Resistance stands no chance against the Lich King's undead horde.
Totally.
But little do they know, the whole battle is just a distraction so that our heroes can sneak into the castle and destroy the Crystal Crown of Tantamore.
Whoa! Spoiler alert!
Sorry. It's just such a good movie and I get carried away.
Marmar, I'm joking. I don't actually care.
Ooh, guys! Here comes my favorite part!
Guys?
Oh, you guys fell asleep. Again.
You'll never defeat us, Lich King!
Not when we have the power of friendship.
And I know exactly how that feels. It really sucks to have your interests completely blown off or patronized. Obviously, I know that most people I talk to aren't going to be as jazzed about my special interests and hyperfixations as I am. But if I'm talking to someone, and I'm clearly excited and passionate about something, having that be met with, oh, I don't watch little kid shows. Or, even worse, having people say that you're a creep because you're an adult. Why do you like these childish things so much? And I'm generally really good at not letting stuff like that bother me, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt sometimes. Having your interests just invalidated like that hurts when it comes from random strangers, and it hurts even more when it comes from people you care about. So then I guess the question is, why does Marcy still stick with Anne and Sasha when they blow her off like this? She does because change is scary, especially big changes. Changes like suddenly having to move away. And when Marcy happened to find the Calamity Box and it actually worked,
Woke up in Utopia, where I fell down a flight of stairs.
She was suddenly able to live out her wildest dreams. And she even meets someone who genuinely respects her. And I do mean genuinely. Because even though Andreas is undeniably a villain and, literal backstabber, he still had an immense amount of respect for Marcy.
And it wanted the best, the smartest, the only one who could beat me at Flipward. Honestly, Marcy, I like you. Always have. I begged the Corps to consider an alternative host, but alas.
Something that Sasha doesn't really ever give her until later. Anne is better about this. She obviously still adores Marcy, and of course is worried for her safety. And by the time they meet again in Marcy at the Gates, Anne has already grown so much. The endgame of the show is ultimately getting these three to grow together and finally move on. And that's something that's especially tough for Marcy to deal with given her autism. It's also worth noting how much Marcy admires Anne and wishes she could be more like her.
Besides, I'm jealous of you.
Huh? What for?
Yeah, what for? You get along with people so well. 3 people you met today just risked their lives to save you. Heck, the planners here adopted you and would do anything for you. Yeah, sure, I'm good at solving puzzles and calculating the check, but you're amazing at making connections. Me, I have trouble looking people in the eye sometimes.
Oh, and there was a bit of a weird backlash I saw about Marcy, where apparently some people were upset because I guess they think it's bad to have an autistic character go through that kind of trauma? Guys, it's a fantasy story about a magical world where frogs talk. Chill. Oh, and I also have to point out the fact that Marcy lived in Los Angeles and literally turned Wartwood into Disneyland in one episode. Marcy Wu is a Disney Parks nerd. Change my mind. Unsurprisingly, the final show I want to talk about here is The Ghost and Molly McGee. As I've said before, this show strongly resonated with me, and I actually see a lot of myself in Molly. And I think the episode Lock, Stock, and Peril is pretty good evidence that Molly has ADHD, albeit not in the same way as her little brother, Daryl.
Molly, we don't have a key for this door. You need to get help.
No problem. One rescue coming up.
And please hurry. I know you can sometimes get a little distracted.
Oh man, this is good.
Yeah, this was worth it. All right, let's get home.
The Ghost in Molly McGee is kind of like Bob's Burgers, where I'd argue that there's not a neurotypical explanation for most of the cast, and I really don't have time to do a rundown on every single character, so let's just move on to Daryl. Daryl is a classic case of ADHD that directly interferes with school.
Today, we will learn the 12 steps to being good.
12? Okay, real talk. My attention span is like 15 minutes, including a snack break.
Daryl is not a bad or malicious kid. He just doesn't know what to do with himself most of the time, and that results in him getting into shenanigans.
What's your secret, Molly? You never get called down to the principal's office. What are you doing that I'm not?
It's more about what I'm not doing.
Double Daryl in Trouble has Daryl become a wraith so that he can have fun messing around while his shell goes to school. Pete and Sharon are initially thrilled to see that he's been behaving better, but they quickly realize that he's just not himself at all.
Does Daryl seem a little strange to you?
Oh, I am so glad you said it. I know he's behaving better and all, but...
It's like the spark has gone out of him. Just this morning, he was doing hilariously insulting caricatures of authority figures.
Which have only gotten funnier with time. Oh no, did we break his spirit? Sharon, we broke our son.
This is really powerful because I think every kid who's neurodivergent, be it ADHD or autism or both, has had times where they wish they could just put themselves on autopilot and be like everyone else. And with autistic people, this can manifest in masking. Masking is described as making efforts to manually act in ways that come naturally to non-autistic people to meet social expectations and blend into society through exhausting effort that can lead to burnout and other mental health issues. And the tricky part of writing a good neurodivergent character is that unless you're writing something where the character is very young and or it has to be very broad like Sesame Street, you never want your character to just be, oh, he's the kid with ADHD, or oh, she's the kid with autism. But that is still a key component of who you are. It's how your brain functions. It's how you operate. And this is exactly what's so great about June and the way she's portrayed. I really wish we had gotten to see more of her, but still, in what little we do get to see of her, June is amazing autistic representation. She checks a lot of the boxes, of course. She's got sensory issues, most notably sensitivity to loud noises and strong smells, which brings about her actually saying that she's autistic in her introduction.
They smell like boiled toenails. June, honey, remember what to say when we receive a gift?
Oh, right. Thank you for the gift. How kind of you to think of us.
I'm autistic, and I guess not everyone can handle my unbridled truth. Honesty is the best policy.
There's so much I love about that scene. I love the part where Esther has to gently remind June to be polite and have just a little bit of a filter, because that's totally something that I struggled with as a kid too. The one we actually had was, between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space we have the power to choose our response. That kind of stuff is really important. Having a child who is neurodivergent doesn't give you an excuse to not parent and let them act however they want. Seeing little moments like that is such a great detail. It lets us know that Ruben and Esther have taken great care towards raising June and giving her the attention she needs. I also really love Molly's reaction to her coming out and saying that she's autistic and that not everyone can handle her unbridled truth.
Honesty is the best policy.
I love how Daryl pretty much immediately becomes friends with her. What's so amazing about this is that everybody actually knows 100% with no ambiguity that June is autistic. And they love and accept her for being exactly who she is. Like I said, the biggest crime with June is a stunning lack of screen time, and especially the fact that we never see her at school. But there's still so many little details they get right with her, even when she's not saying a word. But my favorite thing really is June and Daryl's friendship, because Daryl typically has the attention span of a goldfish, but that's completely different when June is talking. In Jinx vs. the Human World, June starts rambling about something that seems completely unrelated during the Ghost Friends theme song.
Sorry to interrupt
the song, you guys, but I need to find a sample of spectranium-283. It's an isotope of spectranium, and it has the correct atomic weight to trip the ectosensor in my phantom canister, and without it, I won't be able to go.
Tell us later, we gotta go, June!
And then, when Molly gets captured by Jinx, Daryl appears to run off like a coward.
Daryl, where are you going?
Somewhere undisclosed. Don't worry about it.
Except, that's not what he did. He was listening to everything June was saying.
The phantom canister! It doesn't work! It's still missing its Spectranium-283! I got you! Yes! Thanks, Giancarlo! I owe you one!
We thought you abandoned us like a coward.
And give up the chance to swoop in like a hero? Come on, you know me, girl.
These two absolutely mean the world to each other. And their friendship saved the world. That's kind of the coolest thing ever. Also, I have to note that Daryl literally never hugs Molly back, but he hugs June back. And I also have to mention that June is the reason Ollie and Libby find out that Scratch is actually a wraith in the series finale. By the end, June ends up becoming one of the most important characters in the show. A badly written autistic character will either be made the butt of the joke, or worse, made into over-the-top inspirational garbage made by neurotypical people for neurotypical people. The kind of thing that perpetuates stereotypes and doesn't let autistic people be actual people. Oh, and let's not forget having the very neurotypical actor who plays your horribly written autistic savant surgeon lead character, promoting Autism Speaks for good measure. And while I've seen some people criticize June's interest in things like drones and STEM as being kind of standard for an autistic nerd character, it's done very well. She feels like a real person. And that's largely because the team got input from June's voice actress, Sue-Ann Peen, and other autism self-advocates. Oh, and by the way, I strongly headcanon that June is a massive roller coaster nerd. And during the charity stream, the crew said they could totally see that being the case. Which means...
For those of you who are unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of a ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding with one another.
Anyways, the team was committed to getting this right, and I think they absolutely succeeded. I think it's also great that we've had several different female characters to talk about over the course of this video, because for the longest time, autism was pretty much just a cisgender white boys disorder, because so often with girls it's, oh, you're just being dramatic. Daryl and June speak to an unbridled universal truth. Being neurodivergent is a challenge, and I think it's important to recognize those challenges and work to build bridges that help overcome them. And that just comes from communication, empathy, and understanding. But it's also a blessing. There's so much joy to be found in those hyperfixations and in finding people who share in your special interests and experiences. I've made so many amazing friends because of my strong interest in things like theme parks and cartoons. And regardless of if you're neurodivergent or not, I think we all deserve people who love and support us. People who are there to help us through challenges and celebrate our victories, no matter how big or small. While I was working on this video, I went to go see Luca on the big screen, and I was a sobbing mess by the end. I've actually been thinking a lot about the future recently, and I've been talking about moving to California. Now, that probably won't happen for 2 years, but obviously it would be a huge jump to make, and I'd be away from my mom. But of course, the whole movie is also the story of these 3 lonely outcasts becoming friends.
We underdogs have to look out for each other, right?
What's under the dogs?
Underdogs. You know, kids who are different. Dressed weird. Or a little sweatier than average. Too much? Too much.
There's a lot of different ways you can read this, but I think it works really well as a metaphor for autism. I mean, Luca and Alberto literally spend the whole movie masking who they are. And Julia?
Look, during school, I live with my mom, and Geneva. And every summer I come here, and everyone thinks I'm just some weird kid who doesn't belong. I think I know how you feel.
Right? That's why we gotta win.
And then, at the end of the movie, we get this line.
What he did today was amazing. But we can't let him stay in this world. Can we?
Some people, they'll never accept him. But some will. And he seems to know how to find the good ones.
And going back across all these videos I've made about representation and looking at everything. Your culture, gender, identity, sexuality, upbringing, neurodivergence. All of these things that make you who you are. The most important thing any of us can have is a group of people surrounding us who love and accept us for authentically being exactly who we are. Hey everyone, Chandler here. Thank you so much for watching and sticking to the end. I know this was a long video, but it was a massive passion project for me, and I really hope you all enjoyed it. Like I said towards the beginning, I'd love to get a discussion going in the comments. Feel free to share any of your own personal stories, your headcanons, hyperfixations. All I ask is that, as always, everyone be kind and respectful. Thank you so much to Agatha Vile for doing the Autism Speaks rant, and Jim Peterson for doing the interview with me. The extended versions of Agatha's rant and the interview with Jim are actually both available as bonus content in the description below. Speaking of Jim, he's doing some incredible work over at the Rockford Day Nursery, but they could really use some help, and I'll let him explain a little more.
So we're we're in a building from, it's like the early 50s. So we have a number of physical challenges to the building, like we're replacing our leaky roof, where we have to replace our rooftop heating units. So that's going to essentially absorb all our available capital, and the playgrounds that particularly the infant toddler playground is just unusable at the moment, and I feel horrible because physical needs of the building and getting us heat and keeping the walls from turning moldy is taking away the things that I want to actually improve the quality of our center and also the enjoyment of the children. And it's so physical activity is so important. It's particularly it's underappreciated for infants and toddlers. That's they're building up their self-confidence and their strength, and it's vital for mapping their body senses and everything. It's just they've got to be able to move and explore and in a safe environment. So that's one of my biggest goals right now, is to turn that into a usable space again.
If you can donate, please go to their website. Any little bit is appreciated. And on that note, I have an announcement to make. Some of you might remember the Podcast Without a Cool Acronym. Well, that's coming back. The new version of the podcast will be a once-a-month live stream on Sundays, and the first one will be on Sunday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be joined by Jim, Agatha, and several other friends live right here on the Sunnyland Productions YouTube channel. We're going to talk all about ADHD and autism representation. We'll even pick out some comments from this video to read live. You won't want to miss it. I'm also going to try to start actually having weekly uploads again, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss anything. I've got a shorter vlog-style video talking about Disney Channel night planned for next week, and after that is the premiere of Ghost Rider June. Yes, that wasn't a joke. That is actually happening. We are actually doing that. Also, if you want to chat with fellow fans of the channel, as well as myself and a bunch of my friends, feel free to join the Sunnyland Productions server on Discord. Link is in the description. Once again, I cannot thank you all enough for everything. Thank you for the support. Thank you for 10,000 subscribers. Thank you for the incredible success of Operation Inhabitation. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Chandler, are you still on the phone?
Huh? What? Oh, yeah. No, I was totally listening.
Can I leave now?
I need to watch Tron Legacy again for the 84th time this week.
Thanks to you.
Hang on. Where did Kid Becca go?